You're listening to the PR Wind Down Podcast, the show for public relations professionals who are ready to see real change in the PR industry. We are your hosts, April White and Laura Schooler. Let's get ready to wind down.
Do you want me to ask you how you are, or are you too sour to do that?
No, go ahead.
Laura, how you doing?
Fine.
That is not convincing. That's the worst fine I've ever heard in my life.
I'm so fine.
But there's got to be a song for that.
No, there was a movie called So Fine. Look it up, but it was so like SEW.
Uh-huh.
Some horrible movie from the 80s. And
About sewing?
I think it was like designer jeans, assless designer jeans was like the sort of the gimmick.
I thought you were going to start singing out. What's it? Robert Palmer? Is he that? She's so fine.
There's no telling where the money went. I'm a fan of Power Station, especially.
This is from 1981.
Especially Some Like It Hot because I'm a big John Taylor.
Oh, there's butt cheeks on.
Did I tell you? Designer jeans.
Well, trying to get his father out of a financial jam, a man comes up with an idea that turns into an unexpected overnight financial fashion success: bottomless pants. Oh, Laura, you are full of gems.
I sometimes come up with these things and I'm not even sure that they're real or imagined.
Also, what's funny about it is it isn't SEW, it's SO.
It is?
It's a missed opportunity.
Right.
Should have been SEW.
But I think it's supposed but you're right. Mm-hmm. It means so fine.
Right. Okay.
I would have guessed it was a little later, 81. That's almost before my time. But
all right. Well, now that we've gotten through that riveting update, should we talk about what things I should have been trained on?
Yes, I want to talk about how to become work friends with a reporter.
Oh, okay. Awesome. How do you become work friends with a reporter?
Have you ever done it?
I have.
So
I find
it's probably not that easy.
I think it's harder now. So back in the day, I had two work friends. One was a reporter at The Economist.
Oh, that's a good one.
One was a reporter at Forbes. And I took both of them out for lunch in New York when people actually still went to lunch and had time for that. Seems like another lifetime ago.
Right.
Basically what I did is I just took them out to lunch and I wanted to find out what they like to cover, what they're passionate about, what kind of stories they're working on. And then anytime, even if it wasn't for one of my clients, I saw something I thought was a fit, I'd send it to them. So I started sending them tips that were not just relevant to my clients, but like I want to
they might be interested.
Yeah, like I'm your wingman. Like I'm handing you the
Can
layout.
you say who they were? Are they still reporting?
Lane Green is one of them, but he's not an economist anymore. But I mean, this is a long time. I'm going to date myself, but it worked. And I did eventually get a story in The Economist, which is pretty much the hardest thing to ever do.
Right. If you don't work for like one of the big, 10 biggest companies in the world,
I got Rosetta Stone in The Economist.
And then what at Forbes?
I just formed a relationship with him. Not a relationship. That sounds scandalous. Just a friendship. And he and I were both really into movies. And I used to send him movie recommendations, shit like that too, in addition to sending him story angles. But
did you feel that it was genuine?
It was a utilitarian friendship. So it wasn't like we were actually
and they were
going out and having drinks. But in that way, it was a professional friendship as well. It wasn't like, I don't know that becoming drinking buddies with a reporter is actually going to get you anywhere. It could backfire, I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if you're young and dumb because you probably drink too much and
and then you're going to do dumb things and it ruins your credibility. But I think being friends with a reporter in a professional capacity where you're, sending them things, good leads, and hey, did you see that this other outlet covered this story that I thought might be a fit for you? Like that kind of stuff. I was doing a lot of that.
That's good. Friends. I have one reporter friend, and I can't really pitch him any clients that I have because he's a local guy, but I actually saw him this weekend. So I met him outside of my job, and it turned out that we have a lot in common.
Nice.
And so I don't like call him up, but we like have a Twitter thing. And like whenever we see each other out, and I actually saw him this weekend. That's how we met, through like live music. And he just happened to be at this show that I was at, and we ended up talking for like an hour. And I have gotten things on there, but it's not like my paying clients. It's like sort of my friend clients that I help out every once in a while. But he's always there, and I've gotten myself on. Yeah. So I would say, is like my closest friend that's a reporter. Others I've met through jobs, but there's because I work for very large, important companies. So they needed me as much as I needed them. And that was Clear Channel Entertainment, which is Live Nation basically now. And we would take like a boatload of reporters to like see U2 for free. And so, of course, not only did they need me, but they were like, yay, free concerts, and we take them out to dinner and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if anybody does that kind of stuff anymore either. I mean, you can, who knows, maybe one day again. And then when I was at PwC, since it's the biggest accounting firm on planet Earth, and we would do the launch of our big entertainment and media report that was like this, 1,000-page book, we'd invite all of the reporters on the various beats to like our event, and we'd give them all this data. And I became pretty good working friends. I didn't really like hang out with them, but they would show up at events, or I could, they reply to me. And to this day, 2 of those guys will still reply to me, even for dumb, like startup companies, whatever that I have, if I think that it might be relevant. And, all of these reporters were at either really important trades or major media like Reuters.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
But I was fortunate. I mean, I don't know how many friends I could make with like the startup companies that I'm dealing with now. I have started to, or very quickly, make some good working relationships, but nobody's meeting anybody in person. I mean, maybe they are now, but over the past 2-3 years, they haven't been. So
no, and I think you raise an interesting point, because I think I know from obviously I'm not doing as much in the media relations side of things as I once did, which is an understatement of the century, since I was a media relations specialist for a while. But that's all I did. But basically, I think that it's now switched to it where it's more social media based and sort of following them on there and things like that. But I will tell you this, as a former journalist, because I had a couple of sources that were great leads for stories for me. And if you have somebody send you great leads on a regular basis, you will be their friend forever. And he even sent me stuff like he was I'm not going to name names, even though I don't think there's any way anybody would trace him to me anymore. But he worked for the sheriff's department, and I was covering Dallas County, and he was in the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. Dallas County Sheriff.
Where? What state?
Iowa.
Oh, I was going to say Texas. When were you in Texas?
No, Iowa. Dallas County. And Dallas County was the biggest county growing outside of, it was like where West Des Moines is, and there
was like 100,000 people there.
It was a little more than that, but it was still small. Anyway, but Dallas County has had all kinds of things happening, and I had to cover all of the things, right? So the funniest one he sent me was a lead that there was an officer in the sheriff's department. He didn't pass his annual physical, and he wasn't in shape enough. He was not actually fit for the job.
Too many donuts, whatever, yes.
Right, but they had kept him anyway. And I'm sure he gave me the lead because he wanted rid of this guy. But anyway, he slid it to me under the,
wow,
under the side. And we had this sort of gentleman's agreement. And then I outed the guy in the press, and I'm pretty sure he got fired after that. But anyway, so that's not exactly the point, but the point is that I appreciated this guy because I would drive by his office and just go hang out to see what dirt he had for me, and he'd slide me something, and then when he needed me, I was a great asset, right? Because was like, I can't believe the department kept this guy on. He's, worthless to us. And then he fed me the story, and boop, he's gone. So, but I think being a friend with a reporter, the number one thing is just being a good source for them and not making it all self-serving. So if you send them stuff on a regular basis, I think they're more interested in that than they are in the fact that you like all of their cat pictures or whatever.
Right.
So anything else we want to wrap up on that before I let Jen in?
No, you should let her in.
All right, here she comes. Cool. Oh, and Jen hasn't met Laura yet.
No, I was going to say, I need to know. Hi.
Okay,
Hi, it's
awesome.
nice to meet you.
Okay. Our guest today is Jennifer Cronin. She's the Client Services Manager here at Trust Relations. She has 12 years of experience in public relations, content development, and integrated marketing, and she is here to share her wisdom today about client management. So, welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we're going to kick things off and do something a little unusual since she's part of the inner circle here. And we're going to have her be part of the horror story reaction.
That's a good idea.
Okay, I love it.
Because we've had so many horror stories that maybe we're jaded. Although I have to say, I'm usually pretty shocked even
Even
now. Yeah, even now. I'm like, what?
I know. I still can't believe I never told you my own horror story about dancing to Milkshake and my fishnet stockings and green iridescent It's hard to for the Carmichael Lynch Sprung St. Patrick's Day hazing.
That was great.
Jen hasn't heard this yet.
No, I'm gonna need to hear that.
Wasn't it? It's.
I think it came out Friday.
Yeah. You gotta listen to the Friday.
You gotta listen to last Fridays.
But let's hear this one.
Okay, sorry. Enough about that.
Anonymous.
All right, here we go. Anonymous PR horror story of the day. Hi, April and Laura. I don't know if you take this type of question, but I'm here asking it anyway. So I'm not a PR person, but I am working with an agency. The company I work for is 5 years old. We're a SaaS provider solving what is a pretty critical issue in a retail payment processing world. I'm the one managing the agency vendor, and I've been here about a year with my own internal review coming up. We're B2B. I run the marketing department, and I can do social media ads and media buying all day, but PR is new to me. So we've been with this agency a few, maybe 6 months. It was a slow start, and my agency team explained that PR is a slow build, so I tried to be pretty patient and let them run the show with their expertise. But it's been 6 months, and they've only brought me 10 media ops. Is that normal? We have a spokesperson who's pretty much willing to do anything scheduling wise, but one of the opportunities was for a podcast that had virtually nothing to do with our customers, so we said no. We have had one product announcement and a couple executive hires we asked for help with, and we did do some releases and got quote pickups from that. But the CEO wants to see some media hits that will get in front of customers or at least give us a leg up on SEO. My is on the line here too. Is my agency ripping me off? This is the first horror story we've gotten from a non-publicist.
Yeah, it's amazing that people are listening to us all over.
I dig it.
So, I mean, I don't know if there's enough information.
Everybody wants us.
I don't know if there's enough information here really to give the greatest answer, because 10 media opportunities with who? Was it like, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and, then yes, that's a lot. Mm-hmm. If it was some like BS stuff like, Medium and what things that, weren't relevant, then no, it's not enough. So you have to know what those 10 hits or opportunities were, because 10 in and of itself over 6 months, it could be all right. If it's a real
depends on the budget too.
Right. If it's a real budget, if it's a real startup that has like no funding, or if it's like, a medium-sized right. It's really hard to answer. Jen?
Yes, I agree. Those were my two initial thoughts was what is the caliber of the media that's being presented to them? And also what is the cadence of activity, i.e. budget? If the PR team only has so much budget, they can only pursue so many opportunities at a time or apply so many hours to each announcement.
So what I've been learning, especially with, let's not call them startups, let's call them challenger companies.
Challenger brands.
Yeah. So, if you want to avoid getting ire from your clients, you kind of have to run out of the gate quick and get hits in the first month or two. Otherwise, clients start to lose patience like around day 45 to 60. Mm-hmm. Now, they don't have to be the be all end all, but they should be in like key trades or something of real value, like this person said, that touches their customers. And you can try to help generate news with them, try to dig something out of them, even if they don't have some big funding announcement or big partnership or new product or whatever, or even like, some new fancy big hire. Maybe you say, well, how recent have you hired, these people? Maybe there's news that maybe there's a lot of hiring that especially if it's a startup that had happened recently and that was never announced. And now you can say, oh, well, if you just hired those people, 2 months before I started working with you, we can package those, say that they're new, and put out like a management type release and talking about how the company, has grown from, 3 employees to 10, and, 6 of them have all of this great experience from really well-known companies or something like that, right? You're trying to make something like that happen. Geographic expansion. You just got to and then you can try to start, write a release and try to get it in with trades. One of the ways I got in with the trade publication in an area that I had never worked in before was through a harrow. A lot of it is luck and timing, right? But it was on a kind of an esoteric topic, but it was a key trade for my client. And the CEO happened to be really passionate about this crazy esoteric topic. So we got an interview, and the reporter was thrilled because the client is very frank and kind of a hilarious, like, oh my God, who says that kind of way. But, the reporter is really psyched about that because it wasn't like canned. And now this publication has written about them 2 or 3 times and is now interviewing other of my clients. And it all started through a harrow, just me like saying, oh, wow, I think that's one of those, kind of weird topics that my client would be interested to speak about.
Before I forget, there was something else I was going to say that tipped me off in the letter. There's something in there about how they were on a podcast that had virtually nothing to do with the customers. And I just thought it was worth addressing that piece as well, because I think that there are 2 ways to look at this. So there are a lot of agencies that just pitch to get coverage for coverage's sake, but it's not strategic. And the stories have nothing to do with the value proposition, have nothing to do with the key differentiators. They don't reach the target market, et cetera. My funniest example of this was a client that had an agency. They were a pet supplement brand, and they had an agency go pitch them and got him an interview talking about whether the tiger at the New York City Zoo could have COVID or something. I mean, I think it was that. If it wasn't that, it was darn close. And he was so excited to be on Newsmax discussing whether the COVID virus had been in the tiger in the zoo. I was like, what the F does that have to do with like your
business
pet supplement brand? And so it was like he's holding it up as this jewel that he was given. And I was like, what? How is that going to reach anybody that's going to buy your product or do you any good?
Well, I was going to say, and how will people listening to that segment even connect him to like his brand? Like,
no, it's
and
just
his
that he
supplement.
gets to put on LinkedIn. He was on TV, but for what purpose? So to what end? So, I mean, I do think if you have an agency that is pitching you willy-nilly just to a bunch of random things, and those 10 hits don't really have any direct correlation to your business model or your marketing messaging, then it's a problem. However, sometimes it's necessary to do low-hanging fruit interviews that aren't a direct win. I like to call it the golden spiral to the bullseye. So it's like you kind of have to start on the outskirts of where you want to get sometimes, especially if you don't have a brand reputation already and you're building from the ground up, so that you move closer and closer and closer to Forbes or TechCrunch or whatever it is that your bullseye is. You can't always start right there. So it's possible that them getting that podcast placement is at least another opportunity to get the executive experience and or sort of a low risk opportunity to see if he needs to be media trained. I mean, there might be a method to their madness, but I think at the end of the day, if the team doesn't have a method to their madness of why they're doing it and they can't explain it clearly, then you might need to look elsewhere, like trust relations.
I agree. I think one of the things we've been doing for a client that it's been difficult to get them news that's close to their buyers, but we've propped up one of the female executives and have gotten some Q&A and like sort of op-ed blog post opportunities to position her as, a real go-getter, an entrepreneur, a really, like grew her career through against all odds kind of person. Now, that's not what the company does for a living, but it is helping to shine a light on the fact that this company has this great, female executive that works with them, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit tangential, but it's not like crazy like the one that you just gave.
Yeah, no, that's honestly one of my favorite examples of all time.
Yeah.
It was really something. He really was excited about it, and then about 2 months later, he's like, "I don't know if that did me any good." I was like,
April, you mentioned something a minute ago that got my wheels turning, and about the agency, how they set it up, queued it up, and explained it. The podcast win that they got, that this customer or this contact turned down. It also makes me wonder, what was the expectation in terms of like deliverables and KPIs, and was this contact who wrote in, was he clear on what they were doing and why they were doing it? Because he has said here, PR is new to me, so it also makes me wonder, has the expectation been set on what the agency is doing and why the agency is doing it?
That's a great point, Jen. I think that happens a lot, where it's not clear how it's an extension of the marketing goals. And I think it's very, very important for both parties, whether you're the client lead or whether you're the account lead on the agency side, to align on how PR is actually supporting the business and marketing goals. And if the company isn't clear on its business and marketing goals, there's no way that PR is going to fill in and make sense. There's just no way, because there's no direction. So it is going to be that kind of spray and pray approach, because they just need coverage, but it's not serving what they're trying to put forward.
I also think since this person is not a PR person, and from the note sounds like they really don't have any experience with PR, you really don't know what it means and what it takes and what's possible. I mean, and I understand that if you were in PR, would you really have a clue? I mean, it's very non-direct. So you might think, oh, PR people, they, it's like advertising, right? Isn't that what everybody says? Like, that's what my mother would say, and so, no, it's not just us like, Bob, can you run this story tomorrow? I'll give you money or whatever. Like, people just don't understand, or they just think, well, we're paying you to call up Bob and Sue, and then Bob and Sue write about us. Like, what? Why aren't you doing that? Like, they really don't understand. So you can't really blame them. And it's like, you really have had to have been exposed to it to really understand what's even possible. So going back to like the 10 opportunities in 6 months, I mean, that's like almost 2 a month. And if the budget's, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 a month, that's not crazy. I don't think they're getting ripped off. Perhaps their PR firm should be digging a little bit deeper, or like trying to dig out some more story opportunities. But again, there's not enough information to know like what all went down.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, all right.
I would say call me and we'll have a chat on the DL about what actually happened and all the details. That'll help me better suss this out. But
right. I mean, what if they're like, oh yeah, we give them $2,000 a month? You know what I mean? It's possible.
Well, in that case, they're getting that's a steal.
Right. So, but we don't have enough information.
We don't know. Okay. Well, shall we move on to interviewing Jen?
Sure. Jen.
I'm a little nervous, guys.
It's so cute. So Laura, go ahead.
Can I interview her? Because I don't know anything about her.
That's way more fun.
Please.
So it looks like you're sitting in a room with doors. Where are you?
I live in San Diego.
Oh.
Yeah.
San Diego is my favorite. I think if somebody said you have to move to California, I think that's where I would move.
It's beautiful. I love it. I'm from this town in San Marcos in San Diego County. I went away to college 1 year up in Orange County, hated it, transferred to the school I did love, and have been back in San Marcos pretty much ever since.
And where did you go for the remaining?
Yeah, I went to SDSU, San Diego State University.
I was just gonna say,
yeah.
One of my good friend's daughters goes to SDSU.
Yeah, I loved it. They had a great PR program. I'm so glad that I found that program.
How long? So you went right into PR out of college, I assume, since you had the degree?
I did. Yep. I started an internship at a PR and social media agency not long after I graduated, and have been pretty much in agencies since then.
Is it any specific industry?
So I started doing a lot of consumer PR. I worked on local nonprofits, restaurants, some lifestyle accounts like the Del Mar Racetrack and Tiffany and Company and Big Bear Mountain Resort, which is the ski resort down here in Southern California. Yeah. So the first like half of my career was in B2C, and then I worked at an agency that did only B2B. And I felt that I kind of graduated from B2C. I was able to take on some more complex things like longer format storytelling and content marketing, writing bylines, understanding more difficult topics. So that's how I got more into the B2B realm.
Mm-hmm. And what do you prefer one over the other?
I do now. You know, if you had asked me if I like B2B right when I got moved to working on power tools from working on a national fitness brand, I would have said no. But now I do, because it's challenging and it's diverse and it's different. And the caliber of media is more difficult to get into. So I enjoy that challenge.
So I have a question for Jen also.
Go on.
Okay, so Jen, I know that one thing that you are really good at that we chatted about is trusting your gut, whether it's like you're dealing with a client or you're dealing with a team. When do your spidey senses go off? When does that little like sixth sense kick in where it's like, there's an issue afoot that I need to address before it festers over into some disaster?
Yeah, there's such a fine line between reacting emotionally and unnecessarily in a way to something and realizing from a pattern that something is different. And I think that's where my gut instinct gets flagged, is something is different here. It didn't used to be this way. It feels different. Maybe it doesn't feel good. So what is going on, and where did it start? For example, I worked with a girl who was fresh out of college, and she is still to this day a friend of mine, and we keep in touch. And me as her manager and her as my coordinator were a horrible match for each other. We worked horribly together because she was terrified of me. I did not know that she was terrified of me. She would shake before coming into meetings, and then she would paralyze herself on getting back to me and implementing my edits on something. And it turned out that she was too scared to even tell me, like, I just need you to be a little more gentle with me. And so when I found out this information, because she's the kindest soul to ever walk the earth, I felt horrible. So I went to her and I said, I am so sorry. Thank you so much for finally bringing this to my attention. And I since amended the ways that I spoke to her. I spoke her love language of compliments and just being a little bit more gentle with her. And after that, everything was fabulous.
How did you find out her love language?
I just had to stop and reflect on, when do I see her shine the most? And I saw her shine the most when I would say, I'm going to Starbucks. Can I grab you a coffee? Or, you did a really great job on that. Or, it was a Friday, it was a long weekend, and I got her a card that said, have a fabulous weekend. So these little things that made her feel special were just the little things that she needed to know that I'm like truly in her court. And so when I did come to her with like, this wasn't really up to par, or I have feedback on this, it wasn't so striking to her.
Wow, I have to say two things about this. One is, I mean, you're amazing. Because
thanks.
I don't know that I've ever heard anybody who's just like so open-minded to reflect on what you were doing.
Yeah.
That you had no ego about it. You weren't like, this is just the way I am, which is usually what PR people say, right? Like, if you don't like it, then tough shit. So, and I'm also impressed that she, even though she was petrified of you, somehow got up the courage to make sure that this information got to you.
Yeah.
And the fact that you both did that and you both like met each other in the middle changed everything. And I think it's so rare for that to work out. And I don't know if I could challenge myself to be. So I worked for, this is a long time ago, and I was, still in my 20s, but there was a younger woman than myself. And I wasn't that self-aware. She came into my office and she was like, I got to talk to you. And I was like, all right, what? She was like, I was in the army and the generals and sergeants were nicer to me than you are.
That's how she came to you.
And I was like, what?
Ouch.
And but meanwhile, like, I'm not, April, you know me. I really am not all that much different. I mean, it's
No.
just younger than I am now. I might have been I was definitely less self-aware, but like, I wasn't like, do this, do that. But like you said, I'm just not the kind of person to be like, oh, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I like your sweater. Like, I just don't, I still don't really. But I was like so taken aback. And I don't even know if I really changed anything. I think it actually took her to get a little bit used to me. And then like a few months later, she told me that like she never learned from anybody more in her life than from me. So it all turned around.
Amazing.
Aw.
But I have to hand it to her for saying that to me. So I don't know that I was as open-minded as you were, or as like, oh my God, let me change this. Let me be a little bit nicer. I was just sort of like, I think you're crazy, but okay. And we both started to, maybe unconsciously or subconsciously, came to meet in the middle.
Jen, do you also have examples of clients
Right.
where you felt like, oh, something is off
Mm-hmm.
and things are about to go south, they're about to fire us, or whatever the case is?
Yes, I do. At a previous agency, we had a change in the CMO. And so automatic change in the person who makes the marketing decisions puts you in the seat to potentially be let go because new way to do things, right?
Yeah.
So we had a new CMO at this fitness brand, and she didn't exactly have as much experience as the previous contact. And so she wanted us to do all of these things that weren't exactly in line with the strategy that me being on that account for 4 years knew would or would not produce results that this company desired.
Mhm.
And so she wanted me to go, I don't know, like Beyonce and the Today Show were being flown around. And I thought, I just don't know what results this is going to get you. And, she was becoming frustrated with me. And so I went to my boss and I said, red flag, red flag. Like, I think that for a variety of reasons, the way that she is expressing her frustration, her cadence of correspondence, stopping responding to emails, various things that were just little differences that could have been nothing, but they kind of were all amounting to something brewing. And as it turned out, that client the next month chose to go in a different direction for PR. So like you said, my spidey sense was just activated, and I could just tell that something was different. I couldn't put my finger on what it was. And now I know, looking back, that she was probably evaluating our scope, evaluating what she should do differently.
Yep.
And sometimes you can catch it early enough where you can save it. And other times it's just already gone.
It is what it is. Yeah.
It is what it is.
Because once they started doing the whatever it is, unexpected activity or questioning or line of questions or whatever, I mean, I've gotten pretty good at that too. And there are a few trigger points, I think, that can lead to that, like you're talking about the changing of the guard with a client contact. That's always a red flag, almost always, because you never know if they have their own agencies that they're partial to.
Right.
They have different priorities, if they want to spend the budget differently, and you don't know what that looks like. I think that's a really big one. I think
So what was the result though?
Yeah, no, they finished out their contract, which was about 4 months after she decided to let us go. And then I don't think that they ended up hiring another PR agency in our place. If I'm remembering correctly, they chose to do other marketing initiatives to support different verticals of their business.
All right. So Jen, is there anything that you want to add to the mix of, like, what's the gut check that people should be looking out for? Are there key phrases or key actions that you want on edge?
Totally. I guess on the team side, one thing I've noticed is when a team member might start to communicate with you differently or deliver things maybe a little bit later than they used to. Maybe they're not delivering things on time. Assess why that is and figure out what is the roadblock there. In this example that I gave earlier about my colleague, she didn't want to turn anything into me, which then made deliverables late because she was holding all her work. And I think with clients, I think you get to a point where you have enough experience to just feel it, like I mentioned, the cadence of communication is different. Maybe they're pulling in someone else on their team who you haven't spoken to sit in on calls, and they're listening, or they're missing calls, or saying, let's hold on this, let's hold on this. And you wonder, why are you holding on this? This is a big announcement. Why are you holding on this? That could be a big reason. They don't want to spend their dollars on that just yet, or they don't want you to be the one to do it. They're looking elsewhere.
Right. Because they know they're going to try to move it off somewhere else.
Right.
Or this is the other thing I learned: if the client starts going to like the top of the owner of the agency or the top and won't talk to the rest of the team, it's because they're trying to have the we're breaking up conversation.
Yes. Yes. Totally. It's a lot like relationships. You have to navigate those ebbs and flows, and you just like a relationship, you can see it coming sometimes, or anticipate the problems coming. Yeah.
Well, any final thoughts or feelings you want to share?
No, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.
And I hope to get to do it again.
Thank you. Thanks for joining, Jen.
Great to meet you.
You too.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. All right.
Okay. Wait, I have a great idea. There's something that's so important to me. It's baseball, and I have a really interesting thing that happened in the news. Can we talk about that?
Let's hear the baseball news.
Tell me what you think about. So how do you handle this from the team side, the home team and the away team? Here's the story.
Okay.
The Yankees were playing at home this weekend, and they were playing against the Cleveland now Guardians. They changed the name from Indians to Guardians. Mm-hmm. So a ball was hit into the outfield. The Yankees hit the ball into the outfield. One of the Guardians in the outfield ran to catch it and ran into the wall and like really hit his head hard, like boom, like, and you could tell he was like, there's like birds flying around his head. And I guess the wall has like a fence, sort of like one of those metal fences in front of like the digital scoreboard.
Okay.
And so a couple of like his teammates came to see if he was okay. And now this is right above it are the bleacher creatures, and they were going crazy. Yelling, taunting. That's what they do. They heckle the outfielders, right? Like crazy. Yep. So to the point where not the guy who ran into the wall, but one of his teammates came running to the wall and scaled the wall and started, and I just saw it today, say, hit me, mother effer, whatever, started yelling at the guys in the stands, some of the bleacher creatures. So it caused this whole thing.
Because the bleacher creatures were taunting the guy who had gotten
they
knocked out.
Well, they taunt everybody.
But did they taunt him that led to him getting himself knocked out?
No.
They taunted him after.
Right. And then he taunted the rest of so there was that.
Okay.
And then next play, the Yankees got another hit and they ended up winning the game. Not even in that section, in like the other section over, and the fans started throwing stuff at the players on the field. Empty cans, full water bottles, papers onto the field. So two of the Yankees' literally biggest players had to run out into the outfield and tell the fans to stop. They hit one of the umps.
That's awful.
So, horrible. I do not condone throwing anything at anybody. Whoever did it should have been removed from the stadium. Well, the game was over, but they should not be allowed back into the stadium. Never. So what do the Yankees do to the players? Mm-hmm. And this is all about PR, right? Really, at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And what do the Guardians do? Do they have any reason, because their player ran and scaled the wall and started saying, hit me, mother efforts, the fans but he certainly did not help matters. So what do you think each team should do or needs to do because all of this is really about what it looks, the optics, right?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like in general, there just needs to be a recalibration of what's okay in fan behavior and some new rules that are like stated, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's pretty concerning that this is allowed and that there should be something more concrete in place to prevent that from happening in the future. Mm-hmm. I mean, that seems like, ugh.
But what? The taunts or the stuff being thrown on the field or both? Now remember, taunting the outfielders is like part of the game. Stuff being thrown on the
field is definitely no. Taunting is okay, but maybe not if somebody's injured. I mean, that I feel like
100%.
You need to have some kind of guidelines or guardrails for when people are, it's kind of like heckling a comedian. It's okay to heckle them, but you can't throw stuff at them on a stage that could hurt them.
Right.
And if somebody threw something and knocked them out on stage, then continuing to taunt them is completely inappropriate. I mean, I think it's.
So do you think that the Yankees should, attempt to ban these fans for life? Can't come back in the stadium.
I don't think that they can just do that without having. I think that's a little bit like if you don't set the boundaries, you can't set them afterward. I think you have to use this as a learning to set a new code of behavior, and then also have stated repercussions, so that stated repercussions are a foreknown, that's not a word, known before somebody does the bad behavior. I don't think you can just, that's
I've been in the stadium where like the people who work in the stadium have come up to some of these guys and been like, shh, like enough with the yelling. So I'm not really sure why these guys didn't get shushed by the people who work in the stands.
Yeah.
But it was very, this stuff happens very quickly, etc. But it does. So I'm going to say half, not even 80% of the reason that people, especially for a day game, these, young guys, they get drunk and they go there to taunt the outfielders on the other team. So if you tell them they can't, that's removing a huge reason why they go anyway. Now, I can accept, because a lot of what people say is hilarious, and I can accept if it's funny and kind of like trying to get in their head. But if it got, I don't know if we've talked about this, but it's known that in Boston, fans taunt the most insanely racist things at black outfielders more than any, like, you hear like from black players that they'd rather play in like, Atlanta or Florida or whatever than Boston, Massachusetts. The racism, the racist vitriol that screamed at them is unmatched by any other stadium in the United States. Now that's unacceptable too. But if it's sort of like hilarious taunting, etc., but who's there like monitoring what's being said? But baseball's got a problem. Like they're losing ground versus other sports in terms of fandom and whatnot. The A's, and this is a little bit because the fans are sort of rebelling. There's a big article today that there are more cats in the A's in Oakland, California, basically than people showing up for games, like feral cats. There's 40 feral cats and like not even 3,000 fans. So like baseball has a problem. So if you like remove some of the fun of going to the game, so what do you do like from a PR to try to like set boundaries but keep the fun in the game?
I really think it just goes back to that code. I think they have to do some careful analysis of when things cross a line, what's fun versus what's damaging. Yeah. I don't know there's any other great solution, but I'm also not a sports PR person, so it's definitely a little bit out of or a sports business owner. So it's a little outside of my realm of expertise, but.
No, but I like your comparison to like heckling
comedian.
Right. I mean, it's not dissimilar from the like Chris Rock, Will Smith thing in a way, right?
Yeah.
I feel like throwing stuff at players or onto the field is similar. It's a violent act. I mean, it's a physical act.
Yep.
If you could hit somebody in the head, you could knock them out. I mean, who knows, right?
For sure.
And then the verbal taunts, there's a line. So like what Will Smith did with Chris Rock, what he said after he was crazy. It was cursing too.
Right.
And it was angry. That's different than if he had been a wise ass to him, which is what he should have done, which would have been funny and would have gotten his point across.
Yep.
But who's the comedy police?
Yep.
I've just made myself the job I always wanted.
Comedy police. There you go.
I'll be the comedy police at Yankee Stadium.
I love it. On that note, thank you so much for tuning in for the PR Wind Down podcast.
And thank you to Jennifer for joining us for a great interview.
Remember, you can submit your own agency stories and questions and share our show with your friends and colleagues. If you subscribe and leave us a rating, it will help us reach new listeners like you.
And if you have an anonymous PR horror story of your own, send it our way at the contact email below the episode notes.
Can't wait to wind down with you again next time. Ba-dum-bum, ba-dum-bum. Laura didn't do her dance.
Is the rock club the Casbah still in San Diego?
I'm way too old for that. I don't know.
It might not.
These are hardball questions, Laura. I mean, you're really going for it here. Laura, do you want to do the honors?
Wait, can I show you what's on the back of my jacket?
Yes.
You ready?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe not.
No.
Can I ever be ready for this? What is this?
Oh, wait, maybe it's the wrong size. This side's better. Can you see?
It's sports something. Baseball.
It's a little baseball diamond.
That's adorable.
Okay.
Aww.